Hi, welcome back to the Artful Chef. Miss M here, and actually we are in my classroom today on our video. We are continuing our lesson on value this week. So last week we talked about value using a pencil. We created a value scale. We learned how to do a 3D sphere with value, and we worked on a project that had 4 different value shades in it. So this week we are taking it a step further, and we are talking about mark making in value. So we will learn a bunch of different mark making techniques and how you can create value with different marks and different designs and patterns. And we will also, for our project this week, there goes the bell because I'm at school, we will also, for our project this week, we will recreate a version of a Van Gogh picture, because you know we are talking about our spotlight artist this week is Van Gogh. Wore my Van Gogh shirt for you today. Van Gogh was a fabulous artist who did not live long enough to see the true potential that he had. So mark making project for this week and mark making techniques will be your videos that you'll be watching, and I look forward to seeing your artwork this week. We are going to continue our lesson on value by doing mark making. So if you watched or looked at your PowerPoint, you would have seen a video that talked about different artists who use mark making. You would also have gained a little bit of information about our artist of the week, who is Vincent van Gogh. So Vincent van Gogh used a lot of mark making in his work. So what I'm going to demonstrate to you is just some different ways that you can create marks. You are not limited to the ones that I show you, but this is just to help you get started. So I want you to remember what we learned about value and that difference between light and dark. So we will be focusing on those things as we're creating marks. The first, I want you to make 12 boxes on your page. And the first mark making technique that we're going to talk about is called hatching. So to create hatching, it is simply lines. Hatching is just lines across your page. So with my pen, I'm going to fill in this space with some lines. So if you did not want to create value, you would stop there. But we want to create value because that's what we're studying right now. So to create the look of a difference between light and dark, we would go over certain areas more and put our lines closer together. So I'm going to come back in here on the side, and I'm going to put a bunch of lines in here right on top of what I've already done. To make this side look like it is darker, that it has shadows. And if you remember your value scale from last week, this would be more of an 8 or 9 on the value scale. As you move out towards the center, we want to lighten up those marks. We want to look like it's gradual. So we're not going to put as many and not as close together, but we still want it to be more than what's on the right side. So if you imagine that this is a light source coming in, this would be your value 1, your white, and then you move into your 2, then a 5, so it should look something like that. So it gets darker as it goes to the side. So we have just created value using only lines with a technique called hatching. The next technique that I want to show you is cross hatching. Cross hatching begins just like hatching. But to create our value with cross hatching, we're going to go the opposite direction. So we went across, Now we're going to go up and down. I want it to make it look like this top corner is darker than the bottom corner. So I'm going to come back in again with my marks going across and then up and down until I have created the value that I want. The next one that we're going to do is a broken line hatch or broken line hatching. So this is hatching, but rather than going all the way across or all the way up and down with our lines like we did here, we're going to do ours up and down, and we're going to make almost like dashed lines. So it's not a solid line that goes down. Some are longer, some are shorter, but they're broken. That's why it's called a broken line hatching. I want to give it the look that the top part is darker, so I'm creating a different value, and to do that I'm just going to go in with more lines closer together, still broken lines, but more of them, and closer together, filling in more space. So now I want to, this part looks a little harsh, the difference there between the different values. To ease that up and make it more gradual, I'm just going to add a few more lines, not as many as I did on top, just a few. So now we have a little bit more gradual value area there. The next one that I'm going to show you is called an alternating diagonal. So an alternating diagonal is where you draw lines at a diagonal. When you come back in to fill in, you're going to go the opposite direction. Hence the alternating diagonal. I'm going to make my value darker in this bottom corner down here, so I'm going to come back with that first direction. More lines. And I'm going to alternate again. So there's our alternating diagonal. This next one is really fun. It's called Scumbling. And Scumbling is just a pretty scribble. So it's like scribbling. It's just kind of going every which way, every direction. You kind of loop over yourself. You really never pick up your pen. It's just a continuous line. So to create value in Scumbling, you would just go choose an area where you want your value to be. So we're going to choose this top corner right here to be a darker value. And I'm just going to scumble a little bit more up there. A little heavier. So that is Scumbling. The next one is called Stippling. And stippling is tiny dots. So there's an art form called pointillism that we will learn about, and pointillism is also little dots. So what I want you to think about is when you are stippling, you are making dots, but I do not want you to damage your pen or marker or pencil or whatever it is that you're using for this by banging it on the table. So it's not a bang on the table kind of a dot, it's a gentle dot. And if you have a felt tip marker like this, a fine tip marker, you will be able to make gentle dots without having to bang. And if your dots kind of go off a little bit where they're not perfectly dotted, that's okay. The idea is just to fill in your space. Now I'm going to have my value be darker in, I'm going to go with this top corner over here this time. So I want to create a darker value here. So I'm going to start coming in kind of around the middle and adding some more dots to create that mid-tone. And the closer I get to the corner, my dots are going to be more. They're going to be closer, a lot more of them, until you've given that illusion that it is darker in the corner. And remember I said last week, you know, shadows, they don't come in perfect. They're not, a shadow is not geometric, so it's not going to have straight lines. It's going to be a little jagged, and so that's what another thing I want you to think about when you're creating these values that are darker in one area. It doesn't need to be a straight line across where you see a major change all at once. It should be a gradual change. So with that in mind, I'm going to add a few more dots as I go out so that I have more of a gradual color change. So that is stippling. The next one I want to show you is called gravel, because it looks like gravel. So imagine that you are drawing a picture of a road and you want to give that road texture, you want to give it depth, and you want people to know that it's a road with gravel. To make gravel, really all you're doing is just little arched lines. I want to create a darker value in this top corner. So I'm going to add some more lines as I go up. They will tend to overlap and cross over each other, and that's okay, because you are filling in that space. So that is the look of gravel. Let's talk about if you're drawing fish. Let's see how to make fish scales. Now, fish scales don't have to be used just for drawing fish. You can use these on other things too. Depends on what what look you're trying to achieve and where you want to use them. They really could be used in lots of places. So to draw fish scales, I'm just going to come in with these little arches. And I'm going to have them meet about halfway, because usually fish scales do not overlap directly on top of each other. They kind of look like that. I'm going to keep filling in. Oops, got a little over too far, and that's okay. So to create this, this effect using this particular design, we're going to go back in and we're going to add some little lines in here. to our scales. So the more lines that you do, the closer together that you do them, it's going to affect the value. So I want it to look like this part of the fish over here is being shadowed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in and I'm going to do more lines close to where the scales meet. And that's going to help change the value in that area. And when you want to get it where it looks like it's coming out a little bit, just skip a scale or two in between. That kind of will lighten it up. That is how you do fish scales. The next one I want to look at is a cross contour. Now, we did talk about contour lines a few weeks ago when we talked about the line should follow the shape of whatever it is that you are drawing so that you can give that illusion of if it's a cheek or a hand or a sphere sitting on a table. Those lines and the way that they're shaped really make the difference in the appearance of what it is that you're trying to draw. So when you're doing mark making and you're using cross contour, you would have lines that are curved, because contour lines are not straight, they're curved. You would have them come from one direction and then the other, hence the word cross, because they're crossing each other. And where they cross, they will be darker because your lines are overlapping. Now I want to show you patches. Patches can be really cool when you are working on a landscape picture and you're trying to show the earth maybe from a distance, or maybe you're wanting to show patches of dirt or crops or things like that. What you would do with patches is you would make 3 or 4 lines one direction. Then the next time you come in, the lines are going to change. So they are always changing, little patches of different directional lines. That's why they're called patches. So how do you create value when you have patches? You go back over your patches in a different direction this time. So if my lines are going this way in this patch, now they're going to go across, and it's kind of like cross hatching at that point. So you're trying to create value, create a darker area or the illusion of a darker area. So if you notice, this side looks darker because my patches have been doubled up over here. So let's talk about circles. Circles are fun, they're easy to do. If you wanted to use this particular mark making technique, start with your circles big. And gradually have them get smaller as they go down to wherever your lighter value is, until they kind of fade out. To create a darker value at the top, we're going to go back over this with more circles and just start overlapping our circles. Remember, you want a gradual change, so you want them heavy at the top and kind of starting to fade out as you get towards the center, where they're not as close together, not overlapping as much. So now you have your value using only circles. And the last one that we're going to look at is just lines, but not straight lines. So I want you to think about kind of a wavy line and how that would look. You would start here and come down, maybe at different lengths, because you want it to, like I said, taper off and look like your value is different. To create a darker value, I'm going to come in again, come down to the middle so I can create that mid value. And then I'm going to come in heavier at the top with some more lines to create my darkest value. And there you have it. So you have learned 12 different ways to do mark making and create value with your mark making. There are countless ways that you can do mark making techniques. People come up with them all the time, different ones. So I encourage you to, if you enjoy doing this, come up with some new patterns of your own. So when we start creating artwork, you can show me your skills and show me some different patterns that you can think of.